Here we are. It's in Monday. Joe Rayo on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Welcome to everybody. The 17th of August, 2020. As things are just rolling right along here.
Sounds almost like an Italian term.
What? Robust?
Ungats.
Oh, August. Yes. Careful now.
Yes.
Okay. So let me just get my speaker turned up ever so slightly so I can hear you.
I can hear you. You're coming through loud and clear, Joe.
Okay. I don't know, maybe my headsets are just being a little bit evil on me. I go through headsets very easily. I don't know
You're a dime a
why.
dozen.
I wish they were. They just don't last very long. But no matter. Uh, it felt great today. I don't know about
Yes, it
you.
did. It did. It felt very good. In fact, this morning, the temperature up here in the valley, 59 degrees early this morning, and it felt very light. Although toward the end of the day, Renata said, let's turn the air conditioner on again. I mean, I guess she's very susceptible to when the dew point goes above, 51, 52.
Right.
But it
Well,
doesn't bother me anyway. But down here, where I spend most of the time, down here in the basement, it's always cool. So, uh, but upstairs, I guess it does get a little bit warmer. And she is running around and doing things like making dinner and all that sort of stuff. So,
well,
there
yeah,
you
she
are.
needs, especially if you got the stove on, you gotta put you got to put the AC on, even on a day like today. Steve Lapointe just hit super chat early in the game. Thank you so much, Steve. Hope you're having a good day. And we've got quite a bit to talk about. I don't know if you saw the European today, but
I have seen nothing. I have
oh, so
seen.
then everything is going to be a mystery to you. Wait till you see the European today.
Uh, okay.
All right, but it goes to what we were talking about yesterday with respect to the tropics, which seem to be on course to how, as I like to put it, revving up. And we're going to start with that tonight. Uh, there are two waves that the Hurricane Center is talking about, the same two waves that they were talking about yesterday, they're talking about today. One of the things that you'll notice on this satellite loop is the fact that if you remember back about a month or so ago, I talked about how the clouds that were across the intertropical convergence zone, and that is the area that runs from the African coast to South America and points north. That the What's wrong? What? Why?
No, I just broke the European up for my own edification,
Oh, okay.
and I just saw the 240 hour.
All right. Well, hold
Yeah,
on. We'll just hold on
I
because
know, I know,
we
but I
have to
couldn't
put it.
help.
We have to put it in context here. So, anyway, so the intertropical convergence zone, if you remember, back through much of July, was down south of 5 degrees north to about the equator. But now look where all the action is. It has now moved pretty much between 10 degrees north and 15 degrees north. And this is what happens as you go into the peak of hurricane season. That whole zone moves further north. And then these waves, as they come off the coast, if the upper air conditions are are there, well, they start spinning a little bit early. Now, the wave that's south and west of the Cabo Verde Islands is this wave right in here. And that already looks like it's got something going on there. The Hurricane Center pointed out there actually is a broad low pressure area in that wave, and it would have to tighten up to become a tropical depression. So it might take a little while for that to happen. But nonetheless, we've seen these well-defined waves for the last couple of weeks. And here's the other one that's now moving into the Windward Islands. And that's not going to do very much until it gets up into the Northwest Caribbean, where conditions are going to be actually quite favorable for development. And eventually, the wave behind it is going to move into conditions that are going to be conducive for tropical cyclone development once it gets a little bit further to the west from where it is now. So it does look like we could very well knock out one and possibly maybe another two names. We've got still 14 days left, 2 weeks left of this month. So we certainly can continue this record breaking pace of earliest uh, the earliest L storm and the earliest M storm, which, as you pointed out, Joe, Laura and Marco are the next
Right,
two names.
right. Laura and Marco, and and after Marco comes Nana.
Oh no, I guess I don't. Oh, Nana, or is it Nana?
I Yeah, Nana. How about Nanny?
Because it's ah, it's the A
Yeah,
sound is an
yeah.
ah, so it's not. I think it's Nana.
Nana is the name of the dog. If you remember the Broadway musical Peter Pan with Cyril Richard and Mary Martin, and the kids who Mary Martin as Peter Pan took to Never Never Land, they had a dog, and the dog's name was Nana. So
Okay, so they went with the ah sound instead of the ah sound.
right.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll have that battle when the time comes. And in the meantime, one other thing I want to point out: if you look out south of Bermuda, there is this thing. This is actually an upper low that is spinning around. So sometimes they can fool you, but when you look at them, you think, oh, there's something going on there. But in reality, there's a cold upper low, and you see the counterclockwise circulation. It's a little core of thunderstorms there that have popped up near the center. But usually, what happens with these upper lows, you get these thunderstorms that develop, and as soon as you go to nightfall, they tend to disappear. Plus, there's nothing going on as far as a surface low is concerned. So, just want to just point that out. This is also, Joe, getting into the time where we just saw Kyle form off the Jersey coast, which, by the way, it's only the 10th time that that's happened on record. That a
That a storm off of New Jersey is developed.
yes.
I seem to remember there was, let's say in the last 20 or 30 years, I seem to remember that we had one storm one hurricane or tropical cyclone that did that.
Every
I don't
once in a while, yeah, there's 10 on record that have done it. I don't remember when the last one was, and clearly, when it does happen, if it had been memorable, it would have been something that would have made landfall. But in those instances, I would bet that uh, just about every time it's like this one was, where you got a low that moved offshore and just kept on moving to the east northeast. I think the reason why the wave last night didn't really develop into anything is because instead of moving east and east northeast and staying south of 40 degrees north for a while where the water's warm, this one kind of moved on to the northeast and went up to the Gulf of Maine. So that sort of put an end to the idea that that was going to become a tropical system. But definitely, the tropics are looking rather ripe here for some more action. Certainly, now we're going into the peak part of the hurricane season. The next 6 weeks are if what we've seen so far continues, the next 6 weeks are going to be very busy for both of us, I'm sure.
I'm hoping we were talking about this yesterday about the fact that there's a very intense upper low that at least yesterday was probably to pass over northern New England toward the end of the month and really bring a northwesterly upper airflow. And that certainly, if we had any kind of a tropical system in the vicinity, that could certainly deflect that away from the northeast or the mid-Atlantic coast. So
Well,
maybe
I did notice overnight and this morning that the model's completely backed off from that very vigorous look. I have the European up, and here's this goes back to what we were talking about yesterday. We have this trough in the east, ridge in the west setup, and this is something that we have to pay attention to because if a tropical system does develop, you're going to get that south flow or south southwest flow possibly along the east coast. We saw it with Faye, we saw it with Isaias, and as we move through this week, the process of the upper trough, part of it pulling out and lifting up toward Labrador, leaving a trough behind in the Gulf states. And then another short wave swings around. Well, I got the GFS here. I wanted to show the European. We'll come back to the GFS in a moment. This is a new one, so I haven't even seen it. But you see how the same idea here. As I said, you have, whoops. Now I'll have the European up there. There we go. So there's your trough in the east. This is by Wednesday, so we'll run it back. So here's our eastern trough that's going to be with us for much of this week. Part of it pulls out to Labrador, part of it winds up dropping down into the central Gulf states, and then that lifts up and out and through here early next week. And then another trough drops into the Great Lakes. You see this next upper low that comes down from the Canadian Northwest. And you still have that ridge in the west, by the way. That upper low is very vigorous, drops down into the northern lakes. And you'll see the feature that represents the second wave that moved off the one that's off the African coast now. That is identified by this spot right there. That's that. Okay. And then it goes, you've got that east west high in the Atlantic kind of steering it west northwestward. That continues. And on this particular run, because it timed everything out on this run almost perfectly, the trough dropping into the Great Lakes, the system approaching the Florida coast, and then zoom, it moving north northeast off the North Carolina coast. Now, look, this is all in theory. None of this is reality at this point, but I'm glad this run happened, if only because of the fact that this really illustrates again the type of setup that you would need. Now, if that trough in the Great Lakes just kind of swings eastward, that'll just kick it out to the northeast and it'll go out to sea. But if that trough digs down into the Ohio Valley, that thing might shoot up northeastward up the coast. This is the danger of having the trough in the eastern part of the United States this time of year. And I think it's something that we're going to we're going to be paying attention to models going forward to see how this pattern evolves over the next 2 weeks.
I don't really, if it comes up the coast, fine. Let's have it this time move to the east of our area. I mean, I don't mind getting a bit of rain with this, but it's the ones that move inland to the west of us, as we well saw with Isaias. That's where the bad or a nasty wind flow happens to be. That's where the winds could be clocked at 50, 60, 70 miles an hour and could bring down trees and power lines and cause all kinds of problems. I would much, much prefer to have to deal with the possibility of rain or possibly even some heavy rain, as opposed to having to deal with those winds once again. But again, what are we talking about? We're talking about something that's
Yeah, this
possibly
is.
10 days
I mean,
away.
again, this is all just basically a meteorological lesson in a reminder of what to look for. And yeah, if this were 5 days out, I would be far I would start to get concerned. I'm going to switch to the GFS, just the new GFS, just to see how that upper air matches up. And you can see, by the way, it's much different. Okay, the GFS is much different, and I would just point out that the GFS has had a hot hand lately with regards to how things have come out. What the GFS does is, instead of dropping that trough in, it just moves it along. And it also, another important difference, Joe, is the fact that the ridge here on the GFS model is very strong in the Atlantic. It's east-west, but it goes all the way in through the southeast and back through Texas and into the southwest. Now, if that winds up verifying, you're going to wind up with these tropical waves, probably maybe more making a beeline for the Gulf of Mexico eventually, rather than going north of the islands and turning up the coast. So there's certainly a lot of parts of this equation that we don't know yet. The Atlantic ridge, that east-west high that has been persistent through much of the summer, is still going to be there. So obviously the strength of that upper high is going to be crucial to whatever tracks both these systems take. And the other thing is the tendency for troughing to drop into the east, which this run of the GFS says no. And in fact, the GFS on this run builds a ridge off the southeast coast for the last 6 days of this forecast period before it weakens and then it starts to get a little more troughing into the east. So there's a lot going on here, obviously, but it was just kind of an interesting run to see. Kind of interesting to see the European doing what it was doing.
Yes. And
Make it go away.
yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch over the next 10 days or so. And Um, we could hope, Joe, that that vigorous shortwave does indeed come back and help to nudge any tropical cyclone out of here that might threaten by the next week or 10 days from now. But we'll just have to see what happens.
Chances are.
What was that?
I don't know. It certainly wasn't coming from the YouTube.
No, yeah, sometimes on the Zoom audio stuff occasionally sneaks in. So the Hurricane Center, I'm just going to switch to the 5-day outlook here, and you can see that they have both waves highlighted. The lead wave now a 50% chance of developing in the next 5 days as it heads toward the Northwest Caribbean, and the second wave. And by the way, you see where they have the hatched area. Um, that gives you a good idea of where the Hurricane Center's thinking with this. Okay, so
Right.
so they're thinking that this is going to head toward the Leeward Islands and maybe go north of the islands as opposed to going into the Gulf of Mexico. They now shot it up to 30% in the next 48 hours, acknowledging probably the fact that the wave is fairly well developed and a 70% probability of this becoming a tropical cyclone in the next 5 days. So, I mean, it looks to me, just based on what I've been seeing, we seeing in the upper air with the wind shear, that conditions are actually rather conducive for development for both systems. The lead one probably will have to wait till it gets a little bit further west in the Caribbean, and then we probably at which point you may start to see it organize. So we'll see what happens. We've got all week long to watch this stuff. Oh, and the other thing was, and this was something I thought was interesting, in the Eastern Pacific, there, of course, Genevieve is the big deal here, and the reason why I'm even bringing it up is that it actually went from a depression to a hurricane in about 24 hours, and it's likely to strengthen into a major hurricane in the next 12 to 18 hours. This thing is really wrapping up um, uh, quite vigorously. See if I can find a satellite of it. We'll try. Let's try the East Pacific view. Yep, there it is, and you can see the system has really organized very rapidly there. It was bound to happen since they're only on the G, up to the G storm after the very slow start that they had, and there was a depression out in the Pacific there that weakened. They had briefly had Tropical Storm Fausto out there in the last day or so. That pretty much became a tropical storm for like 5 minutes, and then degenerated into a remnant low. But Genevieve looks like it'll probably briefly make it into a major hurricane before it gets far enough north and starts to weaken and fall apart. It's busy,
Peter
busy,
Bicker
busy.
on the chat board, I disagree with you, and I'm sure Joe will too. He says GFS has been horrible with the tropics this year.
Oh,
I'm
not
not
at
sure.
all.
I mean,
Not at all.
the GFS has been like the model to use. It's been so far ahead of all the others, especially in terms of timing and speed. So I'm not sure why you would say that, Peter, but I disagree 100% on that.
I would say this. I would say um, as far as the development part of it, I'm not really too concerned about what the models do with the development part of it. But when it came down to how those storms behaved, particularly the two that impacted us, Isaias and Faye, uh, and particularly Isaias, that the GFS had the speed correct, it had the positioning correct because it was the furthest left of all the models. The timing on that model was almost perfect in the short range. So in my opinion, I did the GFS, and there have been a few instances in May and June where the model picked up on stuff that wound up developing into tropical systems that really didn't bother anybody. The European, on the other hand, in terms of timing and in terms of development, has not, in my opinion, done a very good job.
The European really now this is 2020 we're talking about. Sandy was in 2012. I don't know, Joe. I think the European has been living off of that Sandy outlook of 2012 all of these years. People say automatically say, "Oh, what does the European have to say?" Oh, the European they start, but
But
especially this year, the European has simply not been all that great. especially with the tropics.
Well, let's not even talk about the tropics. Let's even just, we're back full. I just pulled this up full screen again. Let's just talk about yesterday. The European and the icon, which was mimicking the European, didn't even bring rain anywhere close here. It had a dry weekend, and it was wrong. The GFS was spot on with for days, and never really backed off. It adjusted a little up and down, but it never really backed off on the idea of a soaking rain here yesterday from that wave. Now, of course, a few events don't a few events don't necessarily. You need a bigger sample size, and I'm sure along the way in terms of some of the short range stuff that one model did better than the other. But the bottom line is when we're looking at this stuff in the long range period, none of us can make any conclusions about where this is going, but the important thing is to understand what has been going on in the atmosphere in terms of how the upper highs have behaved, how the upper lows have behaved, how the troughs have behaved, the ridges, et cetera, so that you can get a feel for where these things are going to go. Then you use the models the way you should use them, which is as guidance and not as Bible. Because if you start using models as Bible, you're going to get yourself into a lot of trouble.
I think so. I think that you're absolutely correct. And as far as the European model is concerned, again, I mean, like yesterday, Joe, we talk about temperatures, and it didn't get out of the 60s in the afternoon yesterday. The high yesterday at Central Park was 72. That came right after midnight on Saturday night, Sunday
Right.
morning. I mean, I couldn't believe, so many forecasters yesterday were saying, well, the high was 72, without even prefacing the fact that that 72 was when many of us were watching the Inside the Eyelid show.
I
mean,
was going to say we're all we're over the age of 60, so anything that happens at midnight we don't know until we read about it the next day.
Correct.
So yeah, we're
So-
out. David Schwartz hitting super chat tonight. Thank you so much. Coffee and cigars for both of us, Mr. Rayo, according to David.
Well, you can have both because I don't smoke cigars and I don't drink
And
coffee.
you don't drink coffee, so you can have tea. If you'd
I
like,
have
you
tea,
can
that's
spike
correct.
your tea.
We ran out of tea the other day, and my wife went out and bought Bromley's tea.
Oh,
I don't know if you've ever tried Bromley's.
no, I've never had Bromley's.
A little bit different than Lipton, but there's
It's-
Bromley's. There's
I've
what are the
always
teas?
wanted to come to a cosmic understanding of a Lipton flow-through tea bag.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to the maps. I had a thunderstorm just pass by to my north a little while ago. It got very dark here, and but after yesterday's raid, I'm not going to complain about whether the boilerplate is back on or not. But the radar at the moment, the SPC backed off on somewhat on the idea of severe weather. Just carrying a marginal risk to the west of the coast, and that seemed to hold up pretty well. There's a fairly strong cell now in northern New Jersey that's moving eastward, and you see the one in Long Island Sound. That just passed me. There's nothing, Joe, between the Jersey state line and on north of the Hudson Valley, so you seem to be in the clear unless something bubbles up on the northern fringe of that area that's moving through New Jersey now. And just to give it, just to go one radar further south, looks like also a big cell south north around south of Albany on the on that one. Here's the view from the Fort Dix radar, and it's kind of a broken looking line of storms that run from Orange County southwestward to northern Delaware, and then another little band. There's one special marine warning up right now for Chesapeake Bay, and that's about it. And let's run north. I'll go see if I can get up into Albany's radar so we can take a look at what's going on there. And you see there's a big cell right along I-90 now moving into western Mass. Got a little action there in parts of Connecticut and into central Mass. And a few cells up 87 up the northway towards from between Glens Falls and Saranac Lake. And a little bit of action approaching I-81. Just outside of Syracuse. So just some scattered activity. And once we get rid of this, whoops, where'd you go? Hold on a second.
I'm here.
No, you're here. No, I know. I'm my screen's being evil on me. Just give me a second.
Oh, well.
Okay, so let's go back, and I'm going to go back to the full-size radar. And there's your action in the Northeast tonight. See some scattered cells in western New York and western PA. Nice line of storms moving through central North Carolina. And some other cells down in parts of Georgia, Alabama. A little bit busy along the Florida East Coast today with some showers and storms. Seeing some action back through parts of Texas and New Mexico. And it's quiet out in the West. And speaking of which, I have up here now, Mr. Rayo, because that major heat wave in the western part of the United States continues today. It is 4 in the afternoon, so these are the highs of the day so far, and I imagine that these are probably the maxes. So the 115 is in Daggett Airport in Barstow, California. I would imagine that any one of these towns could have been in a Perry Mason episode, just to be clear.
I'm sure that Paul Drake would be wearing white,
right,
as he always does on most of those episodes.
Correct, to match his white hair. Beautiful downtown Burbank, California, 97 for a high there. Palmdale, California, 111. 102 in Rose Valley. Let's see, this 113 is Borrego Valley Airport. The 112 is Joshua Tree National Park. The 117 is Blythe Airport, in right near the Arizona state line. Phoenix today, well, Buckeye Airport 113. Phoenix Airport right now is the high there is 111. They're actually 109 right now. Casa Grande, California 111, but you get the idea. And we're just gonna run up the coast up around San Francisco, some 100-degree plus readings there too. Livermore at 102 for a high. I don't know where this location is that's saying 102. Fairfield, Travis Air Force Base 101. 93 in Napa County Airport, 99 in Concord Buchanan Field. Santa Rosa is a high of 90 today, and then further up the coast, we get up into Oregon and up through Washington State. We've got highs today that were up in the low and middle 90s. 97 at Roseburg, 97 at Umpqua, UMPQA, and it's a portable 2, it's called. Buckeye, 91. So the 90s even up. Let's see what's going on in Washington State. Seattle got to about 90 today. All the airports in and around Seattle, 90-degree temperatures. Inland, way inland, in the eastern part of the state, Joe. Some pretty high numbers here. Ellensburg, 102. Warden Interchange, 108. 99 in Spokane, or is it Spokane?
I think it's Spokane.
Spokane. And north and west of Spokane in Welpinit, 101. And I won't even try near the Colville Reservation. It's 100, so pretty hot up there. Very hot up through eastern Washington and up in northern Idaho with temperatures up above 100.
You know, you have to remember also the Cascades. You know, you get the wind coming in from the west, and they come downslope from those high mountains and into the valley of Washington State, central and eastern Washington. That's really going to heat things up, and that's probably exactly what's happening today with these temperatures in the hundreds.
Yeah, and the dew points are down in the 40s, so the relative humidities are running between 10 and 15%. I just gave you that a quick look. It's a little more humid when you get closer to the coastline, where the dew points are up in the mid-60s. Just want to see, because they were talking about with all that tropical moisture that kind of got in there from Aledia, the tropical system in the Pacific back last week. I just want to see some of these dew points. Yeah, they're a little more. 100 with a 60 dew point, 27% humidity at Branch Mountain. Oxnard 82.63. That's not too bad. Burbank 93.61. I mean, that's bearable, but that is a little bit humid for them. It's usually, and they got a south wind, so that's coming in off the water anyhow.
And you realize I was watching the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell, and they had a reporter who was out there covering the heat, and he said it was 130 degrees
at Death Valley.
And he also said that was the hottest temperature ever recorded on the planet. And I did a double take to that. I said, I'm sure that I must have heard somewhere once or that the temperature reached like 134. And sure enough, I doing a little quick research, 134 degrees, 134.1, according to the World Meteorological Organization, at Furnace Creek Ranch, California. That is also in Death Valley
Hmm.
on 10 July 1913,
Right,
over
but
100 years ago.
right, but I also read something today about the fact that there was some question about that.
The validity of this record is now challenged as possible problems with the thermometer.
Well,
So
how is it that they know that now that there were possible problems 107 years after it happened? That's the question I have.
that's a good question.
Or should we be a little bit cynical that perhaps somebody is trying to make it fit a narrative?
Well, as early as 1949, Dr. Arnold Court came to the conclusion that that temperature of 134 may have been the result of a sandstorm that occurred at the time. He said that, quote, such a storm may have caused superheated surface materials to hit upon the temperature inside the shelter, and that's why they're challenging the 134
Well,
degree reading.
how are they gonna go back to try to how are they gonna figure that out?
I don't know. They've never. I guess they challenge it every single time the temperature gets within a hairbreadth of 134, and the 130, of course, is I guess about as close as it's gotten in recent years. Although I do see also that the highest recorded air temperature on Earth, if the 1913 record were to be decertified, and to my knowledge it has not, then the highest recorded air temperature on Earth would be 129.2 degrees, also recorded in Death Valley in June of 2013. Now, the 130 that has just been recorded would supersede that. So maybe that's what they're alluding to. Maybe they're saying, okay, the 130 is now the official recognized highest temperature on planet Earth.
All right.
You know,
You know what? That's their job. It's not
I
mine.
always thought I always thought the highest temperature was in Libya.
That's
Um,
what. Yeah, but no, that was disputed. That was disputed right away from when it happened, if I recall. By the way, I pulled up the upper air for tonight, and you don't see this too often, but you're having a major heat wave out in the west, and why wouldn't you when you have an upper high with a closed 600 height line wrapped
ouch.
around it? That doesn't happen. That's I think once back, I don't know how many years ago, with a heat wave that was going on in the southern plains and in Texas, that there was an upper high with a 602 or a 603 reading of for the high. I believe that's the highest I've seen. But you've got a high of that strength in the west. It's no shock that we have a trough as deep as we do in the eastern part of the United States, and of course, there, the heat wave being in the west, we're getting the break that we're getting here in the east, which is a nice thing. As long as we keep, these troughs in the east keep moving on through, it's going to keep the heat out of here. Now we do have a lingering trough that's going to hang back uh, in the central Gulf states here. If I can just get my little paint box up. Oh, come on.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, Joe, in my memory, here in the East, I think the highest height I've ever seen or can remember was something like 588. To give you just some idea of like the difference between here in the East versus what's happening right now over in the South Central Rockies with that closed
I'm having a
600.
little weird thing going on. Go on. I'm sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
No, I'm just
You were
saying
saying.
the differences between the East and the West in terms of the heights. I mean, I don't remember anything any higher than like a 588 or maybe close to 590. That's still like 10 or 12 decameters off of what they're seeing right now
Well,
over.
maybe a low 590s in the southeastern part of the United States
Yeah,
for
yeah.
an upper
Well,
high, like 593, 94. I don't think I've ever seen anything higher than that. Maybe I
no,
did, but I just haven't been paying attention.
right.
But here's your trough that lingers back. Of course, you got this northwest flow. So the question is whether at some point we might have to deal with a little bit of shower activity if the trough were to swing eastward, but instead it just kind of opens up a bit, and then you see there's a short wave that comes through here for Sunday, and then that pulls out, and then of course now it does not have that crazy upper low dropping in as we saw earlier when I ran it. I'm just going to go back one run just to see from the earlier run today, because it actually did have the vigorous upper low, but instead of dropping it as far south as it did yesterday, it drops into Labrador. I mean, we still get some cooler air out of it, and then that goes by, and the Tropics still stays. It's actually off the East Coast, but you still have this kind of flattish flow with short waves running along it. So at least from the standpoint of the prior run, Joe, there doesn't look like too much change overall in the long range. Now the question is, in my view, the next question is weather-wise uh, is going to be: are we going to see? I'm looking at the new GFS, which actually from this front that comes through tonight is going to stall out across the southern mid-Atlantic states, and there's a little bit of precip there that pops up, and suddenly on Friday it tries to push it up the coast only to shunt it out to the east. So I don't see any, at least through Thursday, I don't really see any issues.
No, I don't see anything either. I'm just waiting for those dew points in the 50s, which look like it's going to be the case tomorrow and Wednesday, and that's going to make things most delightful.
By the way, the new GFS does, if you look down on the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little circulation that comes out of the Northwest Caribbean and moves into the Southwest Gulf of Mexico and into South Texas. That represents the first wave. And just for laughs, I'm just going to go to the other shot, wider shot, and see if it does anything with the second wave. And it doesn't look like it does anything. But again, I wouldn't come to any kind of conclusions regarding this, because, once upon a time, folks, the models would barely show you a tropical system. So you actually had to do your own work, okay, as far as development or not. So people have gotten so dependent on expecting the models to actually spin up all these tropical storms and hurricanes that when they don't, they think that nothing's going to happen. But we've already had a number of examples this year where the global models did not even pick up on some of the named tropical storms that we've had. So, and that includes a hurricane with Hurricane Hannah in the Gulf of Mexico. If you remember, that basically came out of nowhere. So I don't rely too much on the specifics with regard to what the models show up on the surface. So I'm going to come back full screen, Mr. Rayo. And
I remember back in the day when we used to look at the 72 and the occasionally the 84 hour models, the primitive equation, the PE as it used to be called.
Yeah, you were lucky if it printed an L.
Yeah.
And that was it.
If you saw that, you say, oh, well, if you saw something like that, let's say 72 to 84 hours, then that would immediately click in your mind like, hey, this might be something worth watching or looking for, because it was so rare to see anything like that, any reflection of a tropical cyclone, that long range out or that far out. And that's all we had back in the day. Now, of course, people are looking at tropical cyclone potentials 384 days out, 384 hours out, 344 days out. That would be amazing.
I know. Paul Roman hit Super Chat tonight. Thank you, Paul. Scott Briller just hit Super Chat. And as he points out, by the way, that you are now just 21 subscribers shy of 1,000. So if you haven't done so already, when this show is over, just sashay over to Joe Rayo Weather on YouTube and subscribe to his YouTube channel using his Gmail account so you can get all his video updates, which he does, including his infamous short fuse update.
Well, Joe, I was going to do a short fused update today concerning the thunderstorms. Again, we had a big blob of potential marginal risk over us yesterday. And then things started to kind of like, yeah, well, maybe, man. I said, this isn't worth doing a short fused update about, yes, we may see something or maybe something will pop. So, and now the next couple of days, I mean, it's going to be beautiful. So when there's no need for any short fused updates or any watches or warnings or advisories, that's good. It's nice to try to push me close to 1,000, but when there's not much to talk about, don't talk about it.
Exactly. By the way, Johnny Quest pointing out today is the 51st anniversary of Hurricane Camille.
Wow, I can remember that so with clarity.
I have in here somewhere in my stuff, I have the original advisories of Camille somewhere. I have to look.
That
They're,
was that was an amazing storm. And again, as we pointed out a few days ago, Joe, in as much as it was a devastating storm in terms of wind as it came into the Gulf of Mexico, the real damage was done by the flooding rains well inland
yes,
from the coastal track. That's really all the
30
way up to
inches in
what?
30 inches in some places in like 18 hours.
Right,
And there were more deaths from the flooding than there were from the landfall.
right. And I distinctly remember, Bob Hope doing a telethon. It didn't last all. It wasn't like a supersized telethon. It was like 4 or 5 or 6 hours, but it was for the benefit of trying to get money for those people who were devastated by that terrible storm.
Correct.
50 years ago, 51
years
years
ago.
ago. Oh, God, where's the time going?
I know, and it goes faster. It goes faster and faster as every day goes by.
You realize there's some kids probably who 51 years ago will be talking about It's a Years?
Well, that's yes, quite true.
Right.
All right, so let's do a little bit of Briller Jeopardy, and the category tonight is presidents. So, what state where the most presidents were born in?
I'll take a wild guess and say Virginia.
And you would have been absolutely correct.
Really?
Yes.
Amazing. That was a wild guess.
And how many presidents have come from the great state of Virginia?
Well, we've had 45 presidents, so I'll take a wild stab and say.
Oh, wait. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was reading the same question. I just read the end of the question. There's no number here, so let's forget about that. The next. Oh no, there is a number. I just saw it. My 61-year-old eyes have found the question. So, how many presidents have come from the state of Virginia?
And I will take a wild stab out of the 45 that we've had. I'll say 6.
And Price is Right rules, you are under by 2.
8.
So 8.
Wow.
8. Now, how many different states, if you take all the presidents of the United States and you plot their birthplaces on a map, how many states would you come up with?
So out of the 50 states, how many of those states have given birth to a president or have?
Right. So of the 45 presidents that we've had, would add up to how many states? When you whoever was born in multiple states, what do you come up with? How many different states?
I don't understand the question. How many different?
So we've had 45 presidents. Okay. Right. Some of those presidents were born in the same state. Okay. So there are a number of states in the United States that have never produced a president. So how many states have produced a president? At least one president.
Oh, okay. I'm going to say I'm going to say 22.
Wow. Now see, for Price is Right rules, you would have gone over by 1.
21.
21. Very good. All right. So now name the 5 presidents that were born in the People's Republic of the State of New York.
Let's see. It would have to be one of them. Would be Roosevelt.
Okay. Which one?
Which one?
Well,
I would say both of them.
Both
Franklin
of them. Yes, that's
Franklin
correct.
and Teddy, right?
Right.
Okay. And why don't I know he wasn't Cooper wasn't we didn't have a President Cooper.
No.
I'm thinking of a James Fenimore Cooper.
Fenimore Cooper
of Cooperstown fame.
No.
But there was one president in New York that I think was who lived in that area. I'm trying to remember which one. Okay, so we have one, two,
FDR and Teddy.
Is
Trump is number 3.
Right.
Our current president. Yes.
Right.
So there's 2 left.
2 left. I don't know. Nixon was Whittier, California.
Well, I'll give you a hint. Of the
Okay.
names of all our presidents, this one has probably, I think, the most unusual name.
The most unusual name.
Yeah.
I don't know. William Howard Taft.
No. Millard Fillmore.
Millard Fillmore,
Okay.
who almost has a comic strip named after him, except that's about a duck. Mallard Fillmore.
Okay, and the other president actually, his name would break up into, he has a first name and then a double last name.
I think that's the one I'm thinking of, who lived in the Cooperstown area.
Right.
I'm trying to remember who that was.
I'll give you another outside hint. The name of Ray Walston's character in My Favorite Martian.
O'Hara?
No, the first name.
Martin?
Martin.
Martin Van Buren.
There you go.
There. Martin O'Hara. Bill
Martin
Bixby.
Balsam.
Martin Balsam. Are you ready for your question?
Yeah, go on.
Sure.
Time to embarrass me. Go ahead.
What is the average high and low for Death Valley in the month of August?
I'll say 120 and 90 for a low. 90
Okay.
and 120.
You went one over for the low. It's 89 is the low, and the average is you were 4 under for the high, 116.
Oh, not too shabby.
116 and 89.
Okay.
Question 2, in the year that just ended, 2019, which 5 states had the most wildfires? And the baseball rules apply here, so 3 strikes and you're out. Which 5 states had the most wildfires in 2019?
All right. So I'll say California.
Right.
God. This is a tough one. Because sometimes we get those fires that are up in the Canadian Northwest. So I'm trying to think back. Did we have, anything like that going on in Montana or Wyoming? So I will not. California. That's the one you always hear about. In 2019. All right, I'll say California's next door neighbor, Oregon.
Right. Got 2.
I'll say Idaho. All right, that's one.
Strike 1.
So let's go to. I'm just trying to think of in terms of I guess Washington State.
No.
No.
Strike 2.
All right, then I'm just gonna just go end this torture. Then I'll just say Arizona.
I would have said Arizona too. Unfortunately,
but that's wrong.
That's strike 3. Yeah, California, Oregon, and the other 3 were Texas, North Carolina, and this is a surprise, Georgia.
Well, we've had on and off droughts over the last 4 or 5 years down in the southeast. I just don't remember, hearing about it in the news.
Okay, and in 2001, Death Valley set a record for how many consecutive days over 100 degrees? Assuming, of course, that. Well, they went to Palm Springs. They didn't go to the Death Valley. That episode of I Love Lucy.
I don't know. I'll say 150.
Wow, 154.
Oh, okay.
You missed by 4.
Not too bad.
Not too bad. Yeah.
That's Price is Right rules. So I was under.
Yep.
So you had room though. You could have bid $1 over the 150, and you would have been.
You would not have heard, in this case, you would not have heard the boom 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 boom.
Get $1, win $1,000 in a bonus spin. If it lands in the green section, you win $5,000. If it lands in the On the dollar, you win $10,000.
I would love to see, I'd love to see a spin-off between two people on the wheel. And of course, with the spin-off, you'd also, qualify to get into the showcase. And I'd love to see one of the contestants spin, get five, and automatically get, $10,000, jump up and down and be so happy. And then she's defeated by somebody, the other person who didn't get either the green or the $1, but still ends up in the showcase.
Right.
So,
Well,
somebody who's so
they
deliriously happy for hitting the five,
they've had it happen a few times where they've had multiple people hit a dollar.
Right.
And tie. I think there was one instance where all three got a dollar, and then they did the bonus spin, and then two of them got it, and they had to spin a third time, and so
Right.
they say so they got it again. So
I think Bob Barker said after they got the dollar, they each of them got it. He said, "All right," he said, "we're still in a spin-off. No more money this time." No more
right.
money.
How old is Bob Barker now? I mean, I was thinking about this just yesterday. Was he 96, 97?
I think he's like 96 or 96. Yeah, you're right. And by the way, somebody who was also way up there and passed away, I think only a year or so ago, was Monty Hall.
Right. He
Monty,
was, what, 97, I think, when he passed away.
yeah, it's amazing, these guys. They just go on and on and on.
Yep. Let's make a deal. And here's America. Oh, I was looking at, by the way, I was looking at reading about the history of the show To Tell the Truth. Now, if here's a question for you. Let me see if you know this. What was the original title of the show? Was changed right before they went on the air. Do you know what the original title of the show was?
I heard about this. Yeah, something like judge something with judgment or something, or I don't. I know what you're talking about. I remember reading it, and I remember the title, but I just don't have the title in my head right now.
Well, they took it from The Oath. They were bouncing around titles for the show, so it was the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Nothing
Wow.
but the truth was the title that they had the day that they were going to go tape the first show, and then they changed it to Tell the Truth.
Tell the truth.
Yeah.
And I think that also they even had the graphics made up, with that first, that prototype title. And
all right, so let me see if you can guess this. Okay. Which Price is Right panelist was
panelist on The Price is Right? Or
no, I'm sorry. Which To Tell the Truth panelist sang in operas, was in movies, was in a Marx Brothers movie,
right,
and was engaged to marry George Gershwin.
Kitty Carlisle.
Yes, Kitty Carlisle.
Kitty Carlisle actually bid everybody a fondue because she, as you just mentioned, was going to marry, I think it was George Gershwin, and George Gershwin died. And I don't think they did get married.
I don't think, but that wasn't the reason why they didn't get married. She gave I forgot what it was. She gave a very funny reason.
The fact is that she was not going to be on To Tell the Truth anymore, and then something happened, and she came back, and as we all know, aware, she stayed with that.
No, but she dated. This was back in the 30s. This was back in the 30s that she was dating George Gershwin. But she wound up marrying Moss Hart, who was well known as from Rodgers and Hart and all the wonderful Broadway Kitty Carlisle Hart. You never whenever you saw her. The woman was always so elegantly dressed, perfect hair. I mean, she was a champion of the arts in the state of New York, and just well known and well liked. A wonderful woman, did a lot of charity work, and but she was just probably just. I guess the best way I could put it is that she oozed elegance, and I mean that in a complimentary way. I mean, she just was this incredibly elegant, classy lady. She just was.
Well, there was nothing like those original panelists: Kitty Carlisle, Peggy Cass, Orson Bean, who died
Very
earlier
recent,
this
too
year.
recently.
He died earlier this year, hit and run. I mean, the
Yes,
man was in his
sad.
90s, and he got killed on a hit and run accident. So sad.
Yeah.
It was Orson Bean who said after the first weather satellite was sent up into space, and they had a malfunction, and they didn't get the first satellite picture from that satellite, and it was Orson Bean who said it was probably because somebody moved.
Yeah. And then there was Dorothy Kilgallen.
That was on What's My
And
Line.
she sort of died a very mysterious death, apparently. She was
A lot
murdered
of
or.
people say that she died because she knew too much about the Kennedy assassination.
Yes, that was the story about it. She just yeah, they never really got to the bottom. I don't think they ever got to the bottom of what happened with her.
Right.
So it's all very interesting, all fascinating stuff that when you look back at some. I don't know what possessed me yesterday to go to start researching uh, some of these old shows. It just popped into my head, and I started reading about To Tell the Truth, and remember because that was a show that I remember watching as a kid.
And of course, Bud Collyer was famous for something in his early days on radio.
Bud Collyer, I remember Bud Collyer. I'm just trying to remember the commercial he used to do. Well, John Cameron Swayze did the Timex watches, correct?
Right, right.
What the
But
hell?
Bud Collyer wasn't a commercial that Bud Collyer was famous for.
I don't remember.
Bud Collyer was the voice of Superman on radio.
Oh, there you
And
go.
he was on in the 40s and 50s. And then you and I remember this because we lived through it when they had Superman cartoons in the 1960s on CBS on Saturday mornings.
Yes.
Who did the voice of Superman for that? Bud Collyer, believe it or not.
Really?
He used to show when I think on One to Tell the Truth, he actually said, when I did Clark Kent, I did it this way. And then when it was time for him to change it to Superman, well, this looks like a job for Superman.
I suddenly popped into my head the old Dick Tracy cartoon. Dick Tracy calling Hemlock Holmes.
What was that line that he used when everybody was like in a frozen state and then they had to unfreeze? He said, 6 to it even,
Over and out, yes.
Hold everything, please.
Right, and Hemlock Holmes, the voice that they did for Hemlock Holmes make him sound like Cary Grant.
Right. Hemlock Holmes, Joe Jitsu.
And the Retouchables.
Hypocalorie.
Right. Beady Eyes and Flat Top.
Right.
And then there was Itchy. And then, of course, one of my favorites, because I know a lot of people that this name applies to, Mumbles.
Mumble.
What did he say?
he would go like that, and who was it? Who was his cohort? You're right, Mumbles.
Yeah. I think you mentioned him in that list.
You know,
the gallery.
It's so sad. You'll never see those on broadcast channels again because they're all now considered to be politically incorrect.
Yeah. Well, you can watch them on YouTube.
You could watch them on YouTube, but it was something. It would have been something that sit down when your children were very young and see. This is what I used to watch when I was a kid.
Yeah, but unfortunately, if you do that with you do that, and they're saying, I don't want to watch this. I'm going to play with my video game.
Right. Well, our kids when they grow up, well, they are grown up. What am I saying? I mean, when they have children, they can point to shows like Ren and Stimpy. Oh, this is what we used to watch.
Oh, I loved Ren and Stimpy. The Ren and Stimpy was a lot of fun.
Arnold with the football.
Yes, Arnold. All right. Well, before we start going on now next to SpongeBob SquarePants, we might as well just kind of call it a night.
And Barney.
Oh no. No. Absolutely not.
Once there was some kind of a special on NBC on a Sunday night with Barney. It was on at 7:00, and it was coming up on 7:00. And I remember walking outside. All the kids were surrounding the ice cream truck. There was an old guy by the name of Kazi or Cosmo. He used to drive the truck. So here the kids are waiting for their ice cream, and I said, "All right, kids, Barney in 2 minutes." And all of a sudden, all the kids scattered in all directions to get inside to watch the show. And Kazi's looking at me like, thanks a lot, Joe.
By the way, just an update from the Hurricane Center here on the new outlook. They have raised the tropical wave that is south and west of the Cabo Verde Islands. They acknowledge, as we pointed out on the satellite, that it looked well organized. Well, it's become better organized with increasing banding features. So that's usually a sign that this thing's about getting ready to become either a tropical depression or a tropical storm.
And Laura, it's going to be Laura.
60% probability of becoming a tropical storm, a tropical cyclone in the next 48 hours, and a 90% probability now over the next 5 days. They leave the track the same. And the lead wave is, they pretty much said the same thing on the discussion, but they raised the numbers down from 10 and 50 to 20 and 60. So a 60% probability of something developing once it gets far enough west in the Caribbean Sea. So back tomorrow at 7 o'clock Eastern time. We'll probably have we may have a new tropical depression on our hands, or possibly even a tropical storm. And I just also saw real quick that Genevieve in the Pacific is now a Category 2 hurricane, so it continues to strengthen very, very rapidly.
Getting stronger, and there's a 100% probability that I, and I'm sure you too, Joe, will thank Nick Cortez for hitting Super Chats tonight.
Oh, yes, and also Brandon Doherty hitting Super Chat tonight. So thank you very much. Steve LaPointe, David Schwartz, Scott Briller, Paul Roman, Brandon Doherty, all for hitting Super Chat. Joe and I really appreciate it greatly. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. We will see you tomorrow at 7 o'clock Eastern time. By the way, for Patreon members, there have been a few extra posts over the weekend regarding the long range and the tropics. I did one today, so if you haven't read it yet, you might want to go back and read it. Kind of explains a bit more of what we talked about and in greater detail with regards to the upper air about what's going on as far as the models are concerned. So check that out on my Patreon platform, which is patreon.com/meteorologist Joe Chaffee. It's a subscription platform, so you have to be a member. Okay, have a great evening, Joe. Have a good night.